Boys and Girls Podcast.
I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas, and we're so glad you joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in.
In a society where modern marriages experience increased stress and emotional burnout, best-selling authors, speakers, and podcast hosts Rebekah and Gabe Lyons guide couples toward healing in their powerful new book, The Fight for Us: Overcome What Divides to Build a Marriage That Thrives. Rebekah and Gabe vulnerably share their emotional health journey over a 28-year marriage, encouraging readers with relatable next steps for their own path to relational healing. Every marriage experiences conflict that threatens to divide what God has joined together, writes Rebekah. But understanding why we fight, how we fight, and what we fight about can give us deep insights into who we are as individuals and as a couple. It can shine a light on our traumas and wounds, and that light directs us to the place we need God most, to the place where we need healing. Enjoy this conversation with our friends, Gabe and Rebekah Lyons, and listen all the way through. It is full of helpful, practical nuggets from start to end. Okay, you all, it's so fun to get to sit down with you. We love every chance we get to sit with the two of you and learn from all the things you're learning. Y'all are such great learners in life and communicators about all the things, and we're just so grateful.
That's a high compliment, and the feelings are mutual.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know. I like being around you guys because I'm always asking you questions. Like, when do we get to flip the microphone?
You're so sweet. Well, speaking of learners, you have kids every age at this point, it feels like. Lots of different life stages. We would love to start with something you have each learned from one of your kids lately.
Ooh.
I think, I'll start with Pierce, who's our second oldest. He's about to graduate from college.
Oh, in 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, so
Amazing.
Yes.
22. And,
From our alma mater, so full circle.
Oh, wow.
he has such a passion for music. He's an incredible artist. And
You know, I don't know if y'all remember that. He played the guitar
Yes.
at our big fundraiser.
That's right.
Oh, years
Yeah,
and
with
years
the,
ago.
with Lena, yeah.
Yes.
Little Pierce. I
Yes,
remember.
he was in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But watching him submit and surrender, like that passion to God as he graduates and he's looking towards that next season, but also just persistently working in every area God's given him talent, And so in college, that means, he's doing sales and learning different skills and being very successful, very driven to just do the best he can do in every area that he feels like there's some opportunity God's granting.
Yeah.
And I just love that faithfulness. And it just reminds me, like, no matter whether every day you're doing the thing that you feel like you're gifted to do or you're learning new skills, it's just like applying yourself, and that diligence really produces great fruit.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that in his life.
Yeah, he got certified in nutrition and
Wow.
personal training, and
Wow.
he can write you a song. He can sell you.
Renaissance
he can sell
man.
You some solar. I mean, I know
Wow.
exactly. He kind of gets that from his dad. A lot of interests. But I would say I'm really impressed with Joy right now.
She's how old
She's
now?
our youngest, so she's 11. She'll be 12 in June. Sorry. And she is starting her, tonight she'll begin the first performance of Frozen the Musical. And she's in a school that's K-8, like a Jack and Jill school, community school that has a performing arts center. And she tried out for cheer. And she has just really adapted well to having these same peers since we brought her home from China when she was 5. And so she started kindergarten with these girls, and now they're in 5th grade, and now they're going to keep going till 8th grade. And about half of, there's at least 8 or 9 girls that she's known for these 7 years that are in the play with her. So she definitely if there's good peers, she wants to do everything they're doing. And so we've just been really grateful to see her push herself, even overcoming some of the verbal barriers. Like she has Down syndrome. I don't know if I said that earlier for those listening. And so when we brought her home, she was nonverbal, or we called it Chinglish. It was a little Mandarin, a little English. She even sang Frozen in Mandarin when we brought her home all those years ago. But just watching her overcome, and she has a real high read on discernment. She can read the room. I always joke that she and Cade both have Down syndrome diagnosis are the barometer, right? Like they measure the atmospheric pressure of the home or of the environment. They just read the room emotionally. And so that has served her really well in connecting with her friends over all these years and just keep pushing herself. I'm really am proud of her for that.
Okay, speaking of that delightful young woman, we'd love to ask you all, thinking about the stage of life she's in, how would the two of you say maybe you're different parents now than you were when your older three were in that stage?
Yeah, I would say, with our older kids, as every parent goes through this, you're probably a little more controlling, a little more trying to navigate like what the path is going to look like and directing them that way. And I'd say with our youngest, we felt, even Kennedy, who would be our second to youngest, even though she's 19, it just feels like you learn enough to say, hey, for that child, let's loosen up a little bit. Let's trust God with the directions that he's opening doors, the people he's putting in their life, the conversations they're having with mentors and people outside of us as parents. I think we've both been so blown away by the kindness of God to put people in their life that are speaking things into their life beyond. It's not, you always hear like, oh, they always listen to someone else, but I've been telling them the whole time. No, they're hearing some things I haven't told them. They're hearing some encouragements, some affirmations. I wish I would have thought of them. But when they come home and we have these conversations about what they're hearing and what people are calling out in them, I'm so encouraged by that. And it just keeps teaching us to trust God on this journey that's going to be wild and not always what you thought it was going to be. And that he's got them more than we do, more than we could care for all those little details.
I don't want to speak for other young parents, but for myself, when we first had Cade, I was 26. We found out 6 hours after he was born. The doctor said, we see signs of Down syndrome in your baby. So we were quickly thrust into an unknown world. Already, we didn't know parenting. We definitely didn't know how to parent different abilities or even a community around that. So God catalyzed that very quickly for us. And that was a regroup. And then when we had Pierce 2 years later, Kennedy 2 years after that, I still think there was a side of me that wanted to make those kiddos in my own image. I mean, I don't know. It's like we don't go into it meaning to, but we kind of have some unspoken expectation of what is appropriate behavior. And it usually is similar to ours. Somehow we think our version is the best way. And Kennedy, man, I met my match with her. It was like such a gift and a grace for my daughter to be the one that's like, yeah, I'm not going to do it your way, Mom. And that's okay. And so I would just tell my 20-year-old self now that let them be who they are and you'll enjoy them so much more. And they'll enjoy you so much more. Like we add all this pressure to what our version of like normal or appropriate or success should look like for each kid. And I think with Joy, now that we're kind of almost older, starting, doing this all over again, we were 3 years close to empty nesting with Cade, and then we go back to kindergarten with Joy. So we definitely were like, there's no way we have the energy to care like we did back then about every T being crossed, every die being dotted. Let's just let her be who she is. And I would say the difference in Gabe with Joy is that he calls her a princess at every turn. I mean, it's almost kind of like this like segue between being a parent and a grandparent. We're kind of like just the older parents that are like, just like whatever you want. You can have it all.
She can do no wrong. She's the sweetest, and she brings joy to our house. And you've met her. I mean, she's just a delightful child. I can't believe we get to be her parents.
Yeah, for sure.
She is precious. Well, okay, let's shift a little bit to marriage because you all have this fantastic new book that we're so excited about called The Fight for Us, Overcoming What Divides to Build a Marriage That Thrives. I love that. Would love for you to talk about how the book came about and what you're hoping to accomplish with it.
I think we feel the burden of friends, couples we've known for years, walking through the difficulty that marriage can be for all of us. I don't care how well equipped you feel you are, or even how much intelligence we each have about how to do relationships well. We can always find ourselves in the fight. And our conviction with this project was to really try to air our story and be as honest and vulnerable as we could about the journey we've been on, which has been an amazing marriage. We're in our 28th year, and yet the roller coaster of marriage and not being on the same page a lot of times, going to bed angry at night, having deep frustration and different views about how we should pursue life, even with how we raise our kids or the direction we want to go, all those realities we've encountered, and we've seen God meet us in that, paired with some really good skills we've learned from counselors and people who've mentored us and cared for us, that we found to be so helpful in us gaining ground and traction and stability in our marriage now. And so we just want to help people. We're not coming at this as like, hey, we've got it all figured out. We're only 28 years in. We know there's a lot we're going to still run into and have to learn. But we did feel like there's some great lessons we've learned, and we want to encourage people right now because we're in a society that's essentially telling people, look, if it's not going the way you want it to go, your best option's to get out.
Yes.
And we don't think that's true. And we think in most situations, there is hope. And there is a way when we humble ourselves, when we stop blaming the other person and start taking responsibility for our role, that healing can be found. And so we try to help people and guide them through what that journey might look like for them in the same way that it looked for us.
I couldn't have said it better.
Yes.
Yeah.
So grateful.
Yeah, I think we teach what we must learn, but definitely we don't ever write about anything. I've never written any book that hasn't been something that had to confront me first. And just to let God get in the middle of that and work those things out so that we could find language to maybe help someone else. Because you really do have to be in the trenches. You have to walk through that, that dark night of the soul. You really have to kind of question everything and like throw it up for grabs and surrender it before you can really experience, I think, just the renewal or the refreshing kind of season on the other side of that. And so I almost tell parents, like in every season of shifting, you're going to have conflict. Because it's new and you're both rookies. Like we were both rookies at bringing joy home, we're like that displaced Kennedy as the only girl and the youngest. That displaced Cade as the only boy with special needs or the only child with special needs. And Pierce is just happy about everything, but then she kind of displaced him about being happy about everything. And so I remember in therapy asking our counselor, should we bring her home? And she said, it will be traumatic for everyone. And yes, you absolutely must do it if you feel like you're supposed to.
Yes.
So it was like, oh yeah, every shift is hard, whether it's bringing a child home from China or launching your first one to college or launching your second, or even now empty nesting indefinitely with 2 kiddos with special needs, our Down syndrome bookends. And every time we're like, oh, this is new and we don't know what we're doing. And when that happens, we usually bump up against each other because we both have some version of how we thought this might look. And it never is what we think it will look like. And sometimes the newness and the novelty and the confusion creates frustration with one another. So I encourage people like your marriage might be awesome 5 years in or 10 years in, but there will be hiccups along the way. And just that's normal. And honestly, even your fighting about it is normal. Like that doesn't mean your marriage is over. It just means like, oh, you got a new hurdle. You got to overcome.
And you care.
Yeah.
I love
and
that.
And I'd say Rebekah, she's written amazing books on mental health, emotional health, relational health.
Yes.
But we decided with this, let's turn this towards the relationship in your life that's the most significant, that's going to cause the most challenge and friction because they're with you all the time and they're in that journey with you. And we've seen
they see it all.
even mental health be weaponized a little in marriages to where the claim that my spouse's mental health is the issue and I need to be apart from them because it's not healthy. And you can start to see it get twisted. And versus us leaning in to go, well, if my spouse is having mental health issues, Rebekah went through panic attacks, anxiety, all those kinds of things. I feel like it's our responsibility to lean into that, to be there, to care, to cultivate, to share concern and compassion, versus to run the opposite direction because it gets really uncomfortable. And so we want to encourage couples to take that risk, to stay in versus take the exit.
Well, and not bow out before you get to really see the repair.
Yes.
Right? You get to see the resurrection life on the other side. Maybe some things do need to die in your marriage. And it's like, it's not fun to let those things happen because we talk in the book about this dysfunctional dance. Like there are 4 ways that we have found in all the couples we've served through these intensives and retreats the last 5 years that people just caught up in this dance. And it's usually some form of either a silent dance, an intense dance, an avoidant dance, or an anxious dance. And those do kind of mirror or mimic a little bit of unhealthy attachment. But the bottom line is those are all triggered by emotions that we're not able to name quite yet. And then when we are able to, and so we both are intense, which is triggered by anger, but we're like, what's below that, And so just inviting couples to go, hey, part of that is your wiring in your DNA. You just might be a passionate person. And there's gifting in that. That's not a terrible thing, but you need to learn how to harness that as a strength, not to like tear down your partner. And so we're just trying to equip people with some practical tools of naming what's below the surface, not apologizing for the reaction or apologizing for the way you raise your voice, but going, why was I so triggered by that? Why is this the topic that always comes to the surface with the two of us? Like, let's unpack that.
So good. Yes, that's so good.
And now a quick break to hear from one of our incredible sponsors who make the podcast available.
David, I have a quiz for you. Do you know what the second largest organ in your body is?
I wish it were my brain, but I think it's my stomach.
Wrong on both fronts. The liver is the second largest organ in your body. It's responsible for over 500 functions in your body, but for some reason, liver health doesn't always get the attention it deserves.
Over 30% of Americans have a sluggish liver, a problem that often goes undetected until the very last minute, but not this guy.
Dose is on a mission to educate us all on why it's so important to maintain your liver health and has created an incredible product to help you do just that.
Dose for Your Liver was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion, and maintain your body's filter. It acts as your body's filter, flushing out unwanted elements and breaking down what you consume into essential nutrients.
Dose's science-backed formula promotes liver function, aids digestion, eases bloating, and even boosts energy levels.
Stick with Dose and feel the incredible benefits over time. More energy, better digestion, reduced bloating, healthier liver enzyme function, reduction in brain fog, and better sleep.
Dose is gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and vegan.
Save 30% on your first month of subscription by going to dosedaily.co/RBG or entering RBG at checkout.
That's dosedaily.co/RBG for 30% off your first month subscription.
And now back to the show. Okay, let's go even deeper into the book. So in it, you talk about how to identify and change your conflict pattern and to cultivate healthy relationships. So talk about just how does that happen? What have you learned in that space?
Well, when you understand the conflict pattern, this dysfunctional dance, and you get to the roots of the pain that you're feeling, whether it's the emotion of anger or in a silent marriage, it's hurt. It's deep hurt that's been taking place and resentment's building up. You'd rather just not talk about these issues because you're scared that it's going to create another huge eruption. When you discover what's underneath it, the next step is to understand how to feel the feeling, which was a big journey for me. And we really chronicle that. And I think a lot of men are like me in the sense that they struggle to name the feelings. We're so easy, we just move forward, put it in the past, and in a lot of ways that's maybe helped people accomplish things professionally or achieve. Right. But that doesn't work in your marriage because you're not trying to achieve here. You're trying to connect. You're trying to relate. And so I had to go on quite a journey to relearn how to feel again. And then part of doing that was to examine that origin story. And I know these are concepts you guys talk a lot about where we had to go backwards to begin moving forward. And Rebekah was an incredible healing agent in that process. And I think she'd say I've been that for her, that God used the marriage to be a safe place to explore what is happening and where does that come from and why do I react in these really odd ways that don't seem very normal and seem crazy at times, right? We all think we've married somebody crazy. So where's the crazy coming from? And lots of times it's historical. And the more we have someone to help us in a safe environment, have that conversation, explore with us, be really curious, ask good questions versus judging, then all kinds of cool things can come out of it. And that's really what the next step is for couples, is to be curious about one another and say, well, let's dig into where that's coming from.
Yeah, if that popular phrase in psychology is, if it's hysterical, it's historical, then you have to have fought enough to stop taking it personally. And I think what happens is a lot of marriages, they're so afraid of the tension that we diffuse, right? So we de-escalate quickly before it's even, like, we almost can't even differ in opinion. And I get very concerned about those marriages. I have friends who've never fought once and then they walk away at 25 years when the kids leave home. It's almost like they became roommates. There wasn't intimacy. There wasn't a longing expressed. For whatever reason, there wasn't permission or safety for that to happen. So you might go, well, like they never fought. But at the same point, you're going like, if we're not talking, we're not healing. There has to have some form of honest and earnest dialogue where the other person can hear it without taking offense or condemning or, self-preserving. And so I feel like we are professionals at fighting because we have done this long enough to realize, in this conflict or whatever this escalated moment looks like, only 10% of that is about this moment. 90% of that is about something from our past that is still unresolved, that gets triggered when I poke a button and I don't mean to. And so the assumption is like, when you said this, you meant to pile on, but you're like, no, I wasn't trying to do that. Let's explore, and it's not like who's at fault. We all have our triggers. And I start the book asking Kennedy, like, how do I trigger Dad and how does he trigger me? And I should have known better, but she reads us both. And she just like rattled it off. She's like, you this, when you do this, when you do this, and when he does this and this and this. And again, at the time she was like 19. She's very aware. And I was like, you're right. Okay, I get it. But our kids see it all. Whether or not we try to mute it, obviously we don't want to like go at it in front of our kids, but we've also learned that if we do raise our voices or we do get animated, and thankfully it's not like it used to be, praise God, but we do want to repair in front of our kids as well. We want to humble ourselves and apologize to each other, apologize to our kids. Because they're old enough now, and thankfully they're saying things like, wow, your marriage is the strongest I've ever seen it. And like they're old enough now as adults at 19 or 20 and 22 and 24 to go like, we really love your relationship. And I would say one of the freeing parts of it is that because we both are a little bit intense in the way the gain of a passionate, an intense stance is that you care enough to stay in it, right? And you just kind of want to, and I tend to want to like press for clarity. And Gabe would rather go like, we finally just worked it out. Like, and I just like, but I want to know like how I might be pushing in an area that is hurtful. In the same way, I want you to know how you might be pressing onto something that I can't quite name yet, but I know there's more work to do. I believe God always, he reveals what he's ready to heal. And so as those things come to the surface, when you're in safety and if as long as he's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to like you right now, but I'm not going anywhere. Then there gives you a bandwidth to go, man, I know I have a lot of work to do. And I'm paying attention to my reactions, and I'm journaling through this, and I'm praying through this. And I think I might have had a little light bulb of like, oh, this trigger with money, it reminds me of a moment in college when I was in the financial, like little things. I think God will sometimes just kind of pull that ribbon through, and you're like, oh, pull that thread. Like, oh, yeah, that scarcity versus abundance. Like we would do a whole chapter on money, and I was like, well, yeah, that's my origin. That makes sense.
Yes.
And so that's just so helpful. I think just the insights of looking back without condemnation but going, okay, I want the room and space to process this with you without it feeling like I'm insulting you or you're like, get over it already,
Y'all are saying so many things I want to circle back to. We'll come back to the parenting piece, but will you talk a little bit more about your spouse's mental health and how that can impact and what we do when that is happening?
Yeah.
Well, my experience with walking through this with Rebekah over this last, even more than a decade, when she first experienced panic attacks. I'd never had one, didn't know what it was. A lot of people weren't talking about that at the time.
Right.
Or even anxiety was just becoming a conversation. And it certainly wasn't a conversation we were having broadly. So I had to just trust, hey, she's walking through something and I don't understand it. But it was clear to me she was walking through something. I wasn't denying what it was. But even when I couldn't understand it, I was quick to start to understand I have a role to play here to encourage, to cultivate, to care, to be compassionate.
To be present,
to be with her in those moments. And, and our journey was one where that took place for, a year?
It started in 2010, and then late 2011 is when it kind of came to some closure.
Yeah.
I mean, still, it can be triggered, but not where it was happening a lot.
And there were moments of prayer and just going with her, praying to God to on her behalf when she didn't have words, couldn't open her mouth, you know? So some of that's the most like traumatic moments.
Right.
I would say today we're both very aware of how much we each need rhythms in our life. She wrote The Rhythms of Renewal, right? That this book really has been a part of our life consistently now for many, many years of giving each other the space to rest, to restore, to make sure we have connection happening in our life and creativity, and we're working with our hands. So I'd say we're both very cognizant of that and try to give each other space for that, whether it's hobbies, friends, you know, that we spend time with, and Sabbath, just always prioritizing the break. And those are big areas, I think, as a couple. It's been really helpful because we're both on the same page that these things are important. It's not like one of us is like, I need space, and the other one's like, well, you can't have it. It's not like that for us.
Yeah. And I'm so thankful that this is more mainstream of a conversation. At the time, I was like, am I having a heart attack? You know, you always feel like you're dying. And you know, and back then in 2010, there wasn't a whole lot there. Like, you're fine. I think it's an emotional thing. You're like, oh, okay, now what? And we've gotten to practice this with our kids, you know, and they might not express their anxiety in the same way where it was acute panic attacks. But we do know now that the regulating rhythms do calm the brain, and just find those rhythms and put those in practice in your life, whether it's movement, engagement, creativity, breathing, whatever it needs to be. But that's got to happen every day, and it's got to happen throughout the day, you know, especially if you're carrying a lot of pressure at work or at school or whatever it is. Even in your marriage with parenting, you might have one kid that you're just really struggling. And so sometimes we'll be like, okay, one of us got to get out the door right now. We got to get on foot. We got to, you know, go to the gym, or we need to just need to go like journal for a minute. I need to take a nap, you know, and I think we can help each other out in our marriage to just go like, hey, why don't you go do what kind of fills you up right now, you know, and just monitoring that as you go. Now, this again is a more of a maintenance plan. I'm not really speaking to an acute like spiral,
Right.
but sometimes it takes the acute spiral to get the proper help and then get on a plan, you know, get on some form of like, oh, this is what a normal day should look like. I should probably eat well. I should probably engage people, not on screens. I should move my body, and I should do the kind of work that gives me life versus drains me exponentially. And that might take some time to cultivate that. That might be like a year-long journey to get to like, what is the kind of life that feels like we could flourish in.
And we do encourage couples in this book. There's a whole chapter on health that deals a lot with play, and how much as we get older, we sometimes just stop playing together as couples, and we forget that side of ourselves, those buckets that we brought into marriage. You know, it's like 10 different
all the hobbies we love,
and things we did, and then we're down to like one.
Parenting and work.
Maybe two.
Right.
And we lose part of ourself in that. So I think having a spouse encouraging play and saying, oh, let's remember, what did you like to do? And Rebekah's humbled herself to come alongside and play golf with me.
I love it now.
She's been learning that
I was
skill.
reluctant, but I love it now.
I'm learning how to cook more with her because we have a garden and all kinds of things we're trying to create. And
well, like you said, we're learners. And I do think if any couple, if you can be lifelong learners, the brain needs novelty to be healthy. And so every year we add one thing that we do to the outdoors. Like we started with gardens in 2020, and then we did chickens, and then Gabe added bees. He's a little bee man. And then we added sourdough, obviously, but then also meat birds this last fall, where we like processed our own.
I never heard of meat birds,
chickens.
But we learned how to raise 25 chickens from 8 weeks to 6 pounds. And then we harvested them as a family, got our kids together.
Yes.
Learn how to do that,
vaccines,
which some people are like, hey, this is gross.
Free range.
Wow.
But it's just like a commitment to keep learning and growing and gaining new skills that I never learned that growing up. But, you know, my ancestors and 93% of Americans were farmers 100 years ago. So,
so
everyone was agrarian. And that's one thing we have found that's really helped our mental health. And now we're not saying that everybody needs to farm, but if we cannot figure out as a society or even in our families how to put a lot more of our time and energy outside of the four walls of our home, whether it's gardening or some form of outdoor cultivation of movement in nature and creation, I think we would be healthier and happier just getting outside and, you know, making something, tending to something. Even if you're just walking your dog like all the time, right? Like those are just healthy rhythms that are so good for serotonin. They just make you happy. And the more we can do that as a couple, then that helps offset the stressors that we might be carrying with one child that's really struggling. All of a sudden, we're united around child versus divided on or blaming each other for they're the reason that the child's struggling, that
Yes.
just makes it all the more difficult to help that child heal.
Yeah.
So good. You all were sharing that really honest conversation with your observant daughter a few minutes ago. And let's go back to that. How would the two of you say that stressful seasons in marriage impact kids?
Oh, a lot. So the same daughter, kind of just casually over Christmas when Pierce was home from college, she said, "Do you remember when mom and dad were fighting in like 2014, like a good 10 years ago at that wedding in Pennsylvania? And we thought they were going to get divorced." And like never once have vocalized that to us.
Wow.
And she goes, "Yeah, I remember going to Pierce, like, do you think mom and dad are going to get divorced?" And he goes, "I don't know. I hope not." And like the two
they were like 9 and 11.
Yeah, they were just, and we had lived in New York City during that season. And yes, we were stressed a lot. But still, I'm like, man, they never brought that to us at all. Like not even until like they casually remembered it just a couple months ago. And we're like, man, like just the weight of having to carry that. And we started a policy in our home even like 5 or 6 years ago that no topic is off limits in our home. And they didn't even raise it then.
Wow.
So I just think, wow, kids absorb so much. And we are always saying how resilient they are, which they are, but until they're not, they can only absorb so much. And then at some point their little bodies are going, I feel insecure because you guys are unstable and I'm reading and observing and taking that in, but all I want is you guys to love each other so that I feel safe. And that's really hard because they're not going to find words for that. Or even if parents decide to separate, they're going to put their best foot forward. They're going to put their best face forward, but they're holding a lot in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys know this in your profession, like just helping them have language for what they're experiencing.
But I think couples can be encouraged that, we've had a priority in our marriage since the beginning, since we first started having children, that we were going to make sure we did guard time together as a high priority, and our children would also see that happening, whether that's, 15 minutes a day where we shut the door and the kids aren't getting in, because we're going to catch up and we're going to make sure we have those moments to connect. And so the children quickly understand you're not the first priority, my spouse is. And sometimes that's hard for some spouses because they're like, no, my children, especially I think for women, they're like, no, I actually do prefer to be with my children than my husband. But to say, no, I'm going to commit to like this kind of a rhythm. It's important for the kids. Or for us, it's been a commitment to at least one overnight a year where we leave the children with someone to just get a little bit of time away. And some years we've been able to do more than that. But I would just say for every couple
and some
to
years
early on prioritize, like we're going to show the children that our relationship is the number one priority. And while it can feel like you're dissing your kids to say that, you actually are building in them a trust, almost a covenantal sense for this family, that this family's not going anywhere. And that security, I think, gives them more confidence in every other area of their life.
Yeah. And even if that caregiver that you hire has a pulse and you've only met them once, but they came strongly referred.
We've had those times.
I mean, like we definitely aren't just going blind, but sometimes you're just like, it gets hard. The childcare thing gets hard. We have 2 kiddos with different abilities. That's an extra layer of like a barrier for some people to feel comfortable. And so often, we've tried to make it as easy as possible for them. And we've made sure like, here's kind of like the layout of what to do and we're available and all of those things. But it's been monumental for us to have uninterrupted conversations for a 24-hour period, 1 or 2 times a year, just to make sure that we're not drifting, because we can drift. Every marriage can drift just by saying yes to too many noble things. And you mean the best, and yet you're like, you can't sleep at night. You're like ships in the night. You're roommates at that point. And you just think that like, oh, we'll make it through. But honestly, like it gets really hard when you start missing each other and you're not hearing each other's hearts or longings or needs. That's why he gave us marriage.
I love that, y'all. Well, thinking about the person that's in their car right now listening and that feels a little sick at their stomach because they think y'all just described exactly what's happening in my life. What would you say directly to them?
That like what you're experiencing is so normal. Like just not to say like, this is what we want, but to not condemn yourself like, oh, our marriage is the worst, or my personal experience with this is the worst. Sometimes our feelings of loss or longing are appropriate because we are feeling the loss and longing of love in our relationship. You know, maybe we notice one person is drifting away and we just want them so badly, but we don't know how to express it. We don't feel safe enough now to bring these things up. And then that then makes you go, well, maybe we're not right for each other anymore. Or maybe I married the wrong person. And we almost want to like rewrite history because this current moment feels so defeating. And so I guess my encouragement is the fact that you're hearing this, I think is even providential. And the fact that you desire and you could express that out loud, like, I desire for more. I desire for this to be healthier. That's your first step, right?
Yeah.
And then I would just encourage you to go to your partner and go like, hey, I heard this. Would you listen? And would you be willing to like grab this book together and go through some of those questions? I know both of us are feeling really like lost and lonely right now in our like distance. But what if we just tried this, you know, and like maybe let's pray before we try it and see if God can help us in this. Because if you both express even a small amount of desire, but you're mutual in that desire, God can do a lot with that.
Yeah.
I think humbling yourself to go, I don't want to give up. I feel like I sometimes am tempted to. But even saying that out loud, I think will help like burst the balloon of like fantasy of escape and instead go, reality is like, I don't want to disrupt everything for our marriage and for our kids. I do want to give more effort to this, but I feel alone in my desire to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to play the blame game, which is to assume the other person's the problem. I'm not the one that's at fault here. And we replay the arguments in our mind where we're like, no, I know I'm right. Like, she's crazy. And I think when we can be humble and say, what can I do? What different approach can I have? Posture. God, will you just help me? Give me the grace to even enter that conversation, to say I desire more. That takes a lot of humility, especially if you've been stonewalling for a while and you're silent and your heart's kind of turned off and you're not even feeling it. The key is don't wait till you're feeling it. Take the step now. Go home tonight. Send the text message if your spouse is traveling. Let them know you love them. And remember those early days. I mean, we have to go back and remember. We can't just be in this moment. We got to remember this is a good-willed human being that God gave me. And I know they mean well. And we're getting through some things that are hard, but we're going to have grace for each other. And I'm going to have grace for you. And I'm going to acknowledge where I can do better. And I want to just do more work on my end. And I just want to tell you that. I'm going to do some more work on my end to love you better in the ways you need to be loved. And I think that opens up this incredible opportunity for God to be at work in the relationship, for the other person to feel like, wow, okay, maybe I'll take a step towards you instead of a step away.
And for the one who's hearing this and they already know that their spouse has zero desire and they still do, then we've had a lot of those people ask, what do we do? Is it enough that we're the only ones that really want to preserve this? I would just say, you changing will change everything. The dance will be done if you're done doing the dysfunctional dance on your part. Like, you can't dance alone. Like, I mean, I guess you can, but it's not the same. It's not the same kind of dance. And you have no idea how one person in a relationship getting well, getting healthy, feeling freedom, not retaliation, not self-defense, just feeling like healed, can change everything about the relationship. And the other person is going to take notice. Now, maybe the Lord will just have to soften their heart over time or whatever. But regardless, whoever you are, you're going to bring that same person into the new relationship that you might have an idea of down the road. And wherever you go, there you are. So I would just say, start the work for yourself now, no matter what, because you're going to be a better human, not just for yourself, but for your kids and for your spouse if they begin to recognize it.
Yeah. So good. You two, these conversations with you all are always so rich, so life-giving. And just listening to your words and your wisdom, the reminder for folks of why we want them to get a copy of this book. How thankful we are for your voices. And when you talked about being lifelong learners, you talked about cooking being one of the pieces of that. So we're going to end with something food related and talk about that cooking and ask, what would you say is a family go-to meal right now? And would you share the recipe for us in the show notes? Can we ask you for a recipe?
Oh my goodness.
Well, I feel like it involves chicken because we're smoking and roasting a lot of chicken.
Yeah.
She's making chicken broth from the bones.
You like from the one that we always roast from your chicken.
Yeah.
Or our chickens, but he really was the chicken's dad. And then I helped with the processing of the chickens and the cooking now. But yeah, we have a perfect roast chicken recipe that we will
share.
We will forward with you.
We would love it.
But the beauty of that one is she turns it into bone broth.
Oh, yes.
Then it turns into soup. So, I mean, it's like you get a lot out of this one little
chicken. It's the chicken that keeps on
chicken.
giving.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, we'll share that.
Yes.
Thank you. I just feel like so many people are going to be so encouraged and find hope again.
Well, I
So
want to thank you guys because I think as parents, as a couple, you've come alongside us when we've had the hard questions about our children, things they were walking through, especially during the toughest moments of middle school, high school. I know you help so many parents every day, but that's good, important, essential work that I know for us, a lot of the fight can happen when we're confused about what's happening with our child and we don't know and we don't even know where to go because neither one of us know. And then you come along and you bring wisdom, whether it's through your books and resources, whether it's a counseling session with one of our children or with us as parents to say, hey parents, let me just help take away some anxiety.
Here's how you can be more fun.
And that's helping. It's helped us in our marriage and our family. And so the fruit of our family, we know you guys have played a big role in that.
Yes.
So thank you. And thanks for all the families that you're helping and going to continue to help.
Absolutely.
It's fun to be in it together.
Yes, absolutely. So grateful for you both.
Oh, you too. David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible. Chris Starrett, our engineer.
Our management team at KCH.
And we are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.